We just found a brand new connection between the Federal Reserve Chairman and the XRP ledger that every single one of our listeners needs to be aware of. As Kevin Warsh just became the new Federal Reserve Chairman last week, and Ripple has publicly been on his radar for years. Now, back in 2022, Kevin Warsh co-authored a major institutional paper on digital currencies where inside it, he spotlighted Ripple and XRP as a prime example for efficient cross-border payments, basically calling this a stablecoin-like system that actually works for the banks. You fast forward to 2026, President Trump just signed a brand new executive order directing the Federal Reserve to review crypto firms' master accounts. And with Warsh now at the helm, a man who already understands Ripple's technology, the doors just got blown wide open for real institutional adoption of XRP. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Good Evening Crypto, your favorite crypto news related channel. If you enjoy this content, smash that like button and subscribe, as you're going to get an update every single day, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. And we're going to waste no time diving right into the content that we have prepared for today's show, but I would encourage every single one of our listeners to stick around until the end of the episode so you can have a full understanding of the brand new connection between XRP and the Federal Reserve. But we're going to start off with the document that was getting a lot of attention on social media earlier today, as the new Federal Reserve Chairman, Kevin Warsh, co-authored a paper naming XRP as a liquidity solution between stablecoins. Now, this paper explicitly states that private sector infrastructure should not be ruled out in the future of digital money systems. This means that this is proof that private infrastructure providers like XRP are becoming critical components of the new financial system. And Ripple is one of very few companies that has spent decades positioning itself for this exact moment we're going through right here. But this isn't the only important detail that our listeners need to be aware of, as President Trump just signed a brand new executive order directing the Federal Reserve to open federal master accounts for crypto firms to now have access. Ripple already filed their application months ago, and they've given the US OCC charter and the NYDFS trust, which was already in place starting in 2025. Now, with Kevin Warsh coming in and fundamentally explaining his understanding of the company Ripple and the underlying asset XRP, we are looking at a situation where we have a pro-crypto president and, for the first time in history, a pro-crypto Fed chairman. But why does this matter to XRP investors? Well, let's actually analyze the document that's getting attention on social media, and then we're going to discuss the impact that this could have starting right here, right now. Well, in this paper that new Federal Reserve Chairman Kevin Warsh co-authored, it stated directly, any national currency could thus be convertible into any other national currency in 2 steps via a stablecoin. Such an arrangement would resemble the cross-border payment system that Ripple currently operates with its XRP currency, and it's just one of a variety of possible alternatives. Any democratic alternative should allow for the private sector solution to take place. Multi-currency corridors, for instance, should not rule out the use of a regulated private stablecoin or a cryptocurrency, and I'll throw this in here, like XRP, even though such solution might require additional regulation. As we're recording this episode today, we are on the precipice of the Clarity Act being signed into law later this summer, with many industry executives eyeing that July 4th deadline. Now we're currently in a situation where the Federal Reserve Chairman, Kevin Warsh, not only is explaining his fundamental understanding of the technology that Ripple provides, but the solution it can provide to the private sector as well. And when we think about why XRP truly stands alone, it's not only because it was the first, but it also has many of the strongest connections in the world when it comes to working with the largest, most influential companies. Now, you can add Bank of America, you can add JP Morgan, you can add Standard Chartered to that list. You can now add the Federal Reserve to one of the major institutions that Ripple and the XRP ledger are fundamentally connected to. If you guys are excited about that, smash that like button. Leave some of your thoughts underneath the video. Johnny Crypto, what are your thoughts on this latest document?
Well, this is kind of, to me, almost a game changer. When you think of the first Fed chairman, Powell, when kind of crypto digital assets starting to become mainstream, he basically said, well, we're not really going to touch this thing. We don't know much about it. We're going to go slow. We don't want to. Almost had no interest. Now, fast forward and think about this. We go from a chairman that really kind of and we knew he was going to slow roll and slow play, and he did, right? And now you fast forwarded to this finding of the new chairman, who's like, not only does he understand crypto, he's even written about it, understands it. And almost, a lot of people were wondering why Trump picked Warsh, because Warsh is a hawk. And that's not what Trump wants, right? Trump doesn't want a hawk in there. He wants to lower rates. And Warsh is just the other way. He likes to raise rates. But now it's starting to make me wonder if one of the reasons why he went with Warsh was because of his background knowledge of digital assets and understanding that the whole digital asset infrastructure is going to happen under Trump's watch. If you think about it, it's transforming right now as we speak. And the last thing you want is a Fed chairman in there that's going to be fighting you the whole time or doesn't understand it or is going to slow roll it. So, Abs, to me, I mean, this is just one of those things where you start to connect the dots and you say, hey, Trump continues to put all the pro crypto people in the powerful positions to be able to bring this thing to fruition. I can't help but think that, this is just another step in the right direction by putting in the guy that has knowledge. But how great is it that not only does he have knowledge of digital asset industry, but he's literally calling out one of the assets that we own. Now, he states here, this is just a possibility. It's literally right there on the screen. It's a possible alternative. And the other alternatives could be there. But the key here, the most important line isn't the XRP part. It's right below that where it says Democratic terms should allow for private sector solutions. And that's the most important part, private sector, right? Meaning this literally opens the door for companies like Ripple and their technologies to be implemented into the Fed-like systems. And to me, that's extremely, I can't tell you how exciting and bullish that is for me.
Well, Johnny Crypto, another reason that this is so exciting is because we can discuss the impact that Kevin Warsh is going to be able to have on companies like Ripple now that he is acting as Fed chairman. Well, the faster access to Fed master accounts and payment rails is probably the number one thing on this list, as President Trump just signed a brand new executive order demanding that the Federal Reserve actively review many of the applications, and Ripple has already filed for a standard trust application here inside the United States. Warsh has also publicly stated that digital assets are already part of the fabric, and that's a direct quote, of the U.S. financial system as it operates today. And with this big shift happening behind the scenes, there is a clear path for companies like Ripple to connect directly into the Federal Reserve and get access to products like FedWire and Fednow here inside the United States. And in doing so, we would see the Federal Reserve benefit from cheaper, faster, better solutions where XRP becomes even more efficient for cross-border payment flows, boosting the volume and the utility of the network, while also eventually increasing the demand for the XRP token. Now, obviously, Kevin Warsh is sitting here right as we're about to get digital asset regulation as well, and this is what he was advocating for in that 2022 paper. He advocated for not ruling out regulated private stablecoin solutions as well as private digital assets. That's exactly what the XRP ledger is today. And as chairman, he's likely to favor pragmatic regulation over heavy-handed restrictions, meaning he's going to be much more friendly to the industry as opposed to somebody like Jerome Powell would have been. This reduces the legal overhang and would encourage national banks as well as partners to integrate the XRP ledger and RippleNet products, because not only would it receive a level of validity that we don't have right now, we would also see a level of demand for these products, because once one company starts using blockchain, every other company that's not leveraging this type of a product is at a disadvantage going forward. So what does this really mean? Higher real-world utility equals organic demand for the XRP token. Ripple's treasury and ODL flows could also increase to the inevitable supply shock that this would work to create. So long story short, this creates a much more friendly environment for the company Ripple here inside the United States. And it's also going to give the digital asset XRP a much higher chance of being leveraged by some of the largest companies in the American economy today. And once again, Japan is a very important part of this conversation as well, as today, this was reported September 29th, 2025 by this Japanese Bank of Japan supposed disclosed source. They stated, today there was a briefing for senior officials at the Bank of Japan. What I learned there is that the successor to Jerome Powell is a person extremely close to Ripple and the company circle. And as a result, the credibility of blockchain adoption by non-US central banks will increase significantly. So again, Japan and the Bank of Japan connected to everything that we're witnessing in the American capital markets as well. And we know one thing is for sure, Johnny, when the Clarity Act gets signed, and let's say a company like Ripple also taps directly into the Federal Reserve, gets access to FedWire or FedNow product, we are going to see other countries all around the world begin to upgrade their systems as well, copying the leadership of the American economy. And that's why I think the XRP community has such a massive opportunity sitting in front of us. While the crypto market overall is turning bearish, look at the connections that Ripple and the XRP ledger have compared to everything else in the market today. We really stand alone. And it's not just about Ripple's balance sheet. It's not just about the NDAs or the partnerships that they've disclosed publicly. It's also about what could happen here for XRP and the token being leveraged as a solution for global liquidity. This is the largest capital market on planet Earth, and the XRP ledger is dead set on capitalizing on this opportunity. That's what keeps me excited, and that's one of the reasons I think this Federal Reserve connection is so important in the calendar year of 2026.
Yeah, that's exactly right. When you think about it, this is what XRP was built for. And then there was talk about, obviously over the years it's evolved, and with Swift not really being viewed as being consolidated, or I should say cannibalized by XRP, the thought was, well, maybe they'll find other areas to play in. But this kind of, I don't want to say changes the game, but it certainly brings, I think, XRP and Ripple back to the forefront to at least open the door so that they can, we were talking about in one of the earlier shows about, getting a seat at the table. And, if you're not sitting in with the family, you don't get to play. And the fact that, you may find that Kevin Warsh has a strong connection. We also know President Trump has a connection to Brad Garlinghouse. So you could start to see, again, I say this all the time, it's not what you know, it's who you know. You could see these relationships and connections, and those are huge. They open doors for you. And I can imagine that now that we've got a pro-crypto chairman who understands, the importance of private sector solutions, which is the most important part here, and then understands that digital assets is going to be that, you can see that he's going to be more friendlier, like you said, and let these companies in to play. And I think it's going to also make it a lot easier for Ripple as they're trying, right? We've seen how hard it's been for them. Anytime they try to do something with like 40 banks that oppose them trying to get a banking license, right? Well, if the Fed is behind them, it certainly helps. So we're going to see how this whole thing plays out. But it's, to me, certainly bullish that you can now finally get at least like a little relief in the wall to say, okay, we've got at least the right players in place. They've got some strong ties to some of the investments we're tied to. That's very, very exciting too. And they understand that it's time to kind of shift the game into the digital asset space. Whereas Jerome Powell was slow rolling this whole thing, I think you're going to see Warsh come in here and he kind of put his foot on the pedal. I think he's going to push the gas a little bit. And President Trump is going to want that too. But again, the key really is the Clarity Act, right? So we need to keep an eye on that and see where that's going. But man, you can just see all the pieces, Abs, are just coming in place for this to set up very, very nicely for whether it's 2026 or 2027, for this space just to explode with, I want to say, both financial income, or I should say liquidity, as well as innovation. It feels like it's just on the cusp waiting to happen.
Well, remember, guys, this is a really important discussion for Kevin Warsh, because the paper that he actually wrote in 2022 was discussing exactly how Ripple and the XRP ledger position themselves as a neutral bridge asset between central bank digital currencies, stablecoins, and the traditional payment rails. That's exactly what Kevin Warsh was discussing. So with the Fed under Warsh eases the path for tokenized assets or stablecoin interoperability, well, then XRP's role as a fast, low-cost intermediary will almost instantaneously explode here inside the United States. And this is the massive opportunity that XRP investors are really betting on here, is that if the XRP ledger is tapped by the Federal Reserve as a global payment solution or the natural liquidity layer between banks, the opportunity is here, the floodgates have opened, and the repricing event that we've been discussing would be well underway. If you enjoyed this content, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you all in the next one. So if you're looking to do the same strategies that we implement here on Good Evening Crypto, I would advise everybody sign up for Merlin and click on the I Trust Capital link below. Now, why did these two ideas play off one another? Merlin is going to allow our listeners to understand where they should be taking profit in this market, and I Trust is going to allow our listeners to take that profit tax-free through an IRA product. Now, that's not the best part about this. We are giving new clients a $100 sign-up bonus using the promo code GEC9. So I would encourage everybody, click on the link below the video, use promo code GEC9, and set yourself up for success during this crypto bull market.